Amen. May God redeem them from captivity in the very near future. We have three interesting lectures lined up for this evening related to the holiday of Pesach, which this year falls at an unusual juncture on Saturday night. That is the subject of the first lesson, followed by Liat Yitzchaki, who will talk about Ladino and North African musical traditions for the Seder table, and our own Rabbi Matt Berkowitz, who will talk about creative ideas to enrich your Seder. So I'm going to put up on the screen, hopefully, share screen. Okay. Can you all see the text on the screen in front of you? Michal, can you see the text on the screen? Okay, excellent. I think I made it too big. I was being generous. Make it a little bit smaller. There we go. Okay. As you can see, the date when I originally wrote this in Word was the last time this happened, which was 4 years ago. This happens periodically. And perhaps while we're teaching, Michal will give you the link to my responsum, which is on the Schechter website, so you can read it or share it at your leisure with other people. As I explain in footnote number 3, Erev Pesach falls on Shabbat 12% of the time, or 12% every century, 12 times in the 20th century, and 12 times in the 21st century. And in footnote number 3, I give the date for the 21st century. So, for example, we had 2001, 2005, 2008. Then we skipped to 2021. 4 years later, 2025. The next time is 20 years from now, God willing, 2045. Then again, a small jump of 3 years, another jump of 3 years, and then 2052 skips to 2072. Another jump of 3 years, another jump of 3 years, and then 2079 skips to 2099. I have a feeling that most of us will not be around for Erev Pesach falling on Shabbat in the year 2099. In any case, it's a rare occurrence, but not an extremely rare occurrence. And every time it happens, people scratch their heads and say, well, what exactly am I supposed to do? So I republished my responsum in Hebrew and in English a week or two ago. And now I'm teaching it. I also taught it 2 weeks ago to a group of rabbis for the Rabbinical Assembly. There I used the Hebrew version of my responsum. And this is dedicated to the memory of my grandfather, Rabbi Mordechai Yaakov Golinkin, a blessed memory, who passed away in 1974. My father, Rabbi Noah Golinkin, a blessed memory, who passed away in 2003. Each of them wrote responsa on this specific topic, and they appear as appendices at the end of my responsum. So what are the laws? First of all, we have Tanit Becharot, the fast of the firstborn, which is first hinted at in the Talmud Yerushalmi, in the Jerusalem Talmud, in a passage we're going to revisit in a moment. According to one opinion cited by Rabbi Yosef Karo, since the fast is postponed, it is postponed altogether. In other words, you can't fast on Erev Shabbat, which is Shabbat, on Erev Pesach, which is Shabbat. So according to many of the Sephardic authorities, there is no need to fast at all. On the other hand, according to Rabbi Moshe Isserles, who is the Ashkenazic authority, and I should say parenthetically that Ashkenazic Jews love to fast. In the medieval period, they invented many fast days that did not previously exist in the Ashkenazic realm. He says we move not fast forward, but we move the fast actually backward or forward to Thursday, and we hold the Siyum Masechet, the completion of a tractate of learning, on this Thursday morning. And that is detailed in the Shulchan Aruch, as it says here. Searching for chametz is also pretty straightforward, but you can't do it on Friday night, when obviously you're not going to light a candle and start searching your house. It's done on Thursday evening, on the eve of the 13th of Nisan, as opposed to the eve of the 14th of Nisan, and we burn the chametz on Friday morning. Now, technically, the chametz can be burned all day long, because Friday is not Erev Pesach. Friday is the day before Erev Pesach. However, what we do is we burn the chametz at the usual time before the end of the 5th hour of the day, which by Jerusalem time this year is 11:28 in the morning. And the reason is very simple, so we won't get confused in other years. Since we always burn the chametz in the morning, by the end of the 5th hour, we do the same this year, even though technically we could burn the chametz all day on Friday. And again, this is found in the Shulchan Aruch. The confusing part is the Shabbat meals. So what's the problem? On the one hand, we have a famous passage of Rabbi Levi in the Talmud Yerushalmi. Rabbi Levi is probably a third generation Amorah, which means he lived at the end of the 3rd century. I'll first say it in Hebrew. Amar Rabbi Levi, Aochel matzah be'erev Pesach, keba al arusato bevet chamiv, v'aba al arusato bevet chamiv lokeh. A person who eats matzah on the eve of Pesach is like someone who has sexual relations with a woman to whom he is betrothed in his father-in-law's house. And a person who does such a thing, lokeh, receives lashes, makot. Now, what is this reference to betrothal? In the Talmudic period, there was a year between betrothal and marriage. And sometimes the couple or the young man would live in the house of his father-in-law. But he wasn't allowed to have relations with his future wife because they weren't married. They were only betrothed. So Rabbi Levi gives a rather colorful comparison. He says, eating matzah on Erev Pesach is like having relations with your betrothed wife before you are married. In other words, you're doing something before its time. The correct time to do it is, in this case, this year's Saturday night. And therefore, you may not eat matzah on Erev Pesach. Okay. So, and the major poskim, as it says here, and the big poskim, the major poskim are the Rambam, Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon, the Tur and the Shulchan Aruch, whom we will return to in a few moments, the Tur, Rabbi Yaakov ben Asher, who lived in Toledo in the early 14th century. He died around the year 1340. And the Shulchan Aruch, Rabbi Yosef Karo, and the Ramah. On the other hand, it is difficult to keep chalot for amotzi in the home on Shabbat after all the chametz has been removed. Remember, Thursday night, we searched our house for chametz. Friday morning, we burned our chametz. So that means, in theory, there's no chametz in the house. Well, if there's no chametz in the house and we're not allowed to eat matzah, well, what exactly are we supposed to eat on Shabbat? And of course, today we have a huge range of other things to eat, but you have to remember that in ancient times, most people were poor, and the main thing that they ate was bread. So if you can't eat bread and if you can't eat matzah, what are you supposed to do? Eat cardboard? So what are you supposed to do? How are you supposed to celebrate Shabbat this year? And furthermore, as it says here, chametz may not be eaten on Shabbat morning, which is Erev Pesach, after the 4th hour of the day. In other words, even if you kept chametz in your house for the purpose of having a motzi on Friday night and Shabbat morning, you need to finish eating that chametz at 10:12 in the morning, Jerusalem time this year. And this is not the first time this happened in Jewish history. This situation is mentioned in the Mishnah and the Tosefta and the Babylonian Talmud. But the problem is that these sources are not sufficiently clear, which is why, because we are Jewish, we ended up with 5 different solutions to this problem. So what are the basic texts? I had the Mishnah here. Yes, the Mishnah in the Tractate of Pesachim says, and I'm quoting from Babylonian Talmud, folio 49a, Arba Asar Shachaliot b'Shabbat, the 14th of Nisan, which falls on Shabbat. Mevarim et hakol lifnei Shabbat, divrei Rabbi Meir. In modern Hebrew, leva'er can mean to burn, but leva'er means to remove. We remove everything before Shabbat, according to Rabbi Meir. Okay, that's all the Mishnah says. It doesn't tell you what you're supposed to eat. It just says you get rid of all of your chametz, you remove it before Shabbat. That's what the Mishnah says. The Tosefta adds a phrase. The Tosefta says, Arba Asar Shecholiyot b'Shabbat, Mevarim et hakol lifnei Shabbat. It's identical to the Mishnah. You remove all of the chametz before Shabbat. Ve'ofelo matzah me'erev Shabbat. And you bake matzah on Erev Shabbat. Okay, on Passover, on Shabbat Eve. Okay, we'll return to that passage in a moment. And we'll get to the Babylonian Talmud in a moment as well. So now let's look at the 5 shitot, the 5 methods which developed to deal with our situation this year. Rabbi Yitzchak ibn Giyat, not a household word today, very famous posek, lived in Spain in the 11th century in the city of Lucena, which we'll go back to in a moment. So what does he do? He ignores the Talmud Yerushalmi. He ignores the fact that Rabbi Levi says you cannot eat matzah on Erev Pesach. And this he is cited as follows in one of the collections of Gaonic Responsa. Rabbeinu Yitzchak ibn Giyad wrote, the custom in Lucena was to burn all chametz before Shabbat, to bake matzah on Friday and eat it on Shabbat, and after Shabbat they bake matzah and use it to fulfill the mitzvah. Okay? He does not cite any sources, but the medieval authorities noted the above-mentioned Tosefta, which I just quoted to you. What did the Tosefta say? When the 14th falls on Shabbat, matzah for himself on Erev Shabbat. The question is, well, what does it mean he bakes matzah for himself on Erev Shabbat? In other words, on Friday you bake matzah. Remember, you couldn't go into a store then and buy Manashevitz matzah, or in Israel, matzot Yehuda or matzot Yerushalayim. Everybody baked their own matzah. So some of the Rishonim say that Rabbi Yitzchak ibn Geyat is saying that on Friday we bake matzah for the Seder on Saturday night. However, Rabbi Yitzchak ibn Giyad, Rabbi Ephraim of Kalach Hamad, the Rivaban, and Rabbi Aaron HaKohen of Lunel, these are 4 famous medieval rabbis, explain the Tosefta to mean that he bakes matzah for himself on Erev Shabbat in order to eat it on Shabbat. In other words, they understand the Tosefta to mean that this Friday we would bake matzah, not for Saturday night, but for Shabbat. And we would eat matzah on Shabbat at all the meals, because they are totally ignoring what Rabbi Levi said in the Yerushalmi. Now, if we had time, I would ask you to guess why these famous rabbis from Spain and North Africa and Provence are ignoring the Yerushalmi. But to cut the suspense, I'll tell you why they're ignoring the Yerushalmi. There are 2 reasons. Many medieval rabbis did not study the Talmud Yerushalmi at all. They studied the Babylonian Talmud and not the so-called Palestinian Talmud. Number 2, even when they studied the Talmud Yerushalmi, they didn't necessarily follow it for the purpose of Jewish law. They considered the Babylonian Talmud binding and not the Talmud Yerushalmi. Since Rabbi Levi's opinion about not eating matzah on Erev Pesach appears in the Yerushalmi, in the eyes of many rabbis, that was not binding. And therefore, what is binding is the Mishnah or the Tosefta, the Babylonian Talmud. And therefore, if we simply follow the Mishnah, the Tosefta, and the Babylonian, not the Babylonian Talmud, the Mishnah and the Tosefta, then it is perfectly fine to eat matzah at all your meals on Shabbat this year. Forget about Rabbi Levi, forget about the Yerushalmi, and there's no problem of eating matzah on Erev Pesach. However, as I point out, this opinion all but disappeared over the course of time, apparently because there were other interpretations of the Tosefta, and because people did not want to contradict the Yerushalmi. The second method is based on the Babylonian Talmud, Psachim, folio 13a. And what does it say there? I'll first read the sentence in Hebrew. Arba asar shechaliyot b'Shabbat, mevarin et hakol milifnei Shabbat, umisharin mazon shtei seudot kedei le'achol ad dalet shaot. Okay? The Babylonian Talmud says, when the 14th falls on Shabbat, all chametz is burned before Shabbat, and some of the food is left over for 2 meals that should be eaten before the 4th hour on Shabbat. In other words, we do burn all of our chametz on Friday morning, but we leave over enough halot for Friday night and Shabbat morning. But on Shabbat morning, we have to finish that chametz early in the morning, roughly at 10 a.m., because after that, you're not allowed to have any chametz in your house on Erev Pesach, which is Shabbat. And this is the ruling of many famous poskim, such as the Geonim, some of the Geonim in Babylon, the Rambam in the laws of chametz u'matzah, the Shulchan Aruch, etc. And Rabbi Yosef Karo adds that for Sudash Lishit, the third Shabbat meal, we can use matzah ashira. Matzah ashira literally means rich matzah or enriched matzah. Today we call it egg matzah because instead of using water, we use fruit juice or other things in order to bake that matzah. And he says that this Sudash Lishit should be eaten before the 10th hour so that we will have a good appetite when we reach the Seder. And what else do these poskim say? They say that we recite Kol Chamira v'Chamiyah, the formula for Bitul Chametz, for annulling the Chametz, on Shabbat morning at the end of the 5th hour. So if you open up the Luach Beit HaKnesset, the standard calendar of synagogues published by the chief rabbinate of the state of Israel, it says that this year we burn the Chametz on Friday morning, and then we have Chalot on Friday night and Shabbat morning, and then we do bitul chametz. We nullify the chametz. We say kol chamira v'chamia di'iker birshuti. We nullify the chametz on Shabbat morning at the end of the 5th hour, just as we do every year. And this is very common practice among many different Jews. However, I would like to show you how problematic this practice is by quoting one of the rabbis who supports this practice. And this is Rabbi Chaim David Halevi, who for some 30 years was the chief Sephardic rabbi of Tel Aviv. And this is his description of what we should do this year, telling us that this is what we should do. And this is our custom. On Friday, the 13th of Nisan, all the chametz is burned, and all the utensils of chametz are concealed. And the cooking is done for Shabbat using Pesach utensils. A small amount of chametz is left over, preferably pita or rolls that do not make crumbs. And immediately after Kiddush on Friday night, they crowd around a designated corner on a separate table. The bold letters are mine. Eat the amount of bread required at a Shabbat meal with vegetable salad and the like. Shake out their clothes very well. Remove the tablecloth and the table. And then they sit down at the main Shabbat table and eat kosher for Pesach foods, unkosher for Pesach dishes. And then he has a similar description for Shabbat morning. And at Shabbat morning, after you've eaten your bread in a special corner on disposable plates, you say Birkat HaMazon, you destroy the chametz by throwing it in a public place, or some people flush it down the toilet, and then they recite the normal nullification of chametz, and then they continue with their Shabbat meal using Pesach dishes and so on and so forth. And for Sudash Lishi, for the third meal, they eat meat and fish without bread or matzah. However, Rabbi Eliyahu Chazan, a famous Sephardic rabbi in the 19th century, already noted the problematics of this practice. This year, 1876, Erev Pesach falls on Shabbat. And my soul is so anguished over the prohibitions which occurred this Shabbat due to the eating of chametz, because they could not be extremely careful about the crumbs and sweeping the house and the like. In other words, as careful as you might be, by following this practice, you're going to end up with crumbs on your house on Pesach. In addition, the joy of Shabbat HaGadol is prevented because they will eat between the stove and the oven. That's a Talmudic expression, what Rabbi Chaim David Halevi called eat in the corner. Also because on Shabbat they pray at a late hour and we have to worry that the time for nullifying the chametz will pass. In other words, there's a contradiction between trying to pray on Shabbat morning and trying to gulp down your chametz food before 10 o'clock in the morning. So in the end, you may not nullify the chametz at the right hour of the day. Therefore, other solutions were sought. Rabbi Ovadia Yosef, one of the most famous poskim in the 20th and early 21st century, published some 16 volumes of responsa, along with dozens of other books. He has a third solution, which in my opinion is not a solution. He said that we should use matzah that has been cooked, not matzah ashirat, but matzah mevushelet, cooked matzah, in chicken or meat soup as follows. After the soup has been cooked, remove it from the burner, and while the soup is still hot enough to burn the hand, put several matzot enough in one's needs in the soup, one after the other, in such a way that the matzah fully absorbs the taste of the soup, and then you can use it to fulfill the mitzvah of the 3 meals. It is best not to remove the matzah from the soup until it cools off, because otherwise it will fall apart when you remove it from the soup, and you still want it to be matzah. Similarly, you can fry your matzah in oil. And furthermore, he says that on Friday night, you can use regular matzah, because Rabbi Levi's saying about not eating matzah on Erev Pesach referred to the daytime and not to the nighttime. So he's basically saying that Friday night you use regular matzah, Shabbat morning you used matzah mevushelet, cooked matzah. And as I wrote, from a halachic perspective, his method is valid, but it's not practical because most people are not going to want to engage in cooking their matzah, trying to get it out of the soup in one piece. The fourth method was suggested by Rabbi Yaakov Betzalel Zolti, and I learned about this method 20 years ago from Rabbi Guillermo Bronstein of Peru, who sent me a copy of the booklet. When he was chief rabbi of Jerusalem in 1981, that was one of the years when Erev Pesach fell on Shabbat, he said that the Yerushalmi is only opposed to eating matzah on Erev Pesach if that matzah could be eaten at the Seder. Okay? Therefore, if before baking regular matzah for Pesach, we state explicitly that this matzah is not for the purpose of fulfilling the mitzvah of eating matzah at the Seder, then we can eat it on Erev Pesach. In other words, it has to do with our intent. And therefore, he arranged that year in 1981 to bake special batches of matzah, which were not for the Seder, where the people baking it said explicitly, this is not matzat mitzvah, this is not matzah for the Seder, and therefore we can eat this matzah, which is not for the Seder, on Erev Pesach. I do not find this convincing for 2 reasons. First of all, it is very ingenious, but it ignores the plain meanings of Rabbi Levi's words in the Yerushalmi. Rabbi Levi was opposed to eating matzah on Erev Pesach, quote, because he did not conquer his desire to wait until the evening to eat matzah. That's one of the commentaries on the Yerushalmi. In other words, the point is that on Erev Pesach, you don't want to eat matzah, so you will eat matzah that night, b'te'avon, with a good appetite. Whether your intent was that it's matzat mitzvah or not mitzvat matzah, you still ate matzah on Shabbat, and therefore it ruins the novelty of eating matzah on Saturday night. Changing our intent before baking the matzah does not address Rabbi Levi's concern. And secondly, even if some rabbi arranges to bake special matzah, most Jews will not have access to it. And therefore, we arrive at the fifth and simplest method, which is what I recommend. It was cited by Rabbi Vidal de Tolosa in his Magid Mishnah on the Rambam in the 14th century. And this is what Rabbi Yosef Karo wrote about this in his commentary on the Torah. And one should not object that one should destroy all chametz before Shabbat and leave nothing, meaning leave no chametz, and on Shabbat eat matzah shira, what we call egg matzah. In other words, why don't we do that? Since not every person is able to make egg matzah for all 3 meals, therefore the rabbis did not trouble us with this. In other words, he has no halachic objection to eating egg matzah for all the meals on Shabbat. He simply has a practical objection. He says that it's difficult for most people to bake this type of matzah, and therefore the rabbis did not trouble us to do that. In other words, if it were possible for every person to bake egg matzah, Rabbi Yosef Karo would have agreed to do this, because egg matzah is neither chametz nor matzat mitzvah. It cannot be used at the Seder. And therefore, egg matzah can be eaten on Erev Pesach. Indeed, this was the custom in Izmir, Turkey in the 19th century. According to the testimony of Rabbi Chaim Palache, a very famous posek, he favored this practice because if chametz remained, it would be difficult to get rid of the crumbs, and a person would not be able to eat calmly at a carefully laid table with a clean tablecloth. This was also the practice followed by Rabbi Eliyahu Chazan, whom we quoted previously. Remember, he was the one who in 1876 was very uncomfortable with the common practice. He said he refrained from imposing on the people to make egg matzah, but he did disclose his practice to several scholars, hoping that perhaps in so doing, the custom will work its way into practice. And indeed, Rabbi Yosef ibn Walid in Sefer Shmo Yosef said that is exactly what we should do. And moving over to the Ashkenazic world, the famous Ashkenazic posek Rabbi Moshe Feinstein in 1954 wrote, this is the words in bold are my bold, "We have seen that it would be appropriate to enact and institute the practice of destroying all chametz before Shabbat, and to fulfill the mitzvah of the Shabbat meals using egg matzah. And those who are able and want to take the trouble to bake egg matzah for the 2 Shabbat meals, that is preferable." And this approach of Rabbi Feinstein was well received by various halachic authorities, including my grandfather, Rabbi Mordechai Yaakov Golinkin of blessed memory, who was the Beit Din of Associated Synagogues of Massachusetts for many years. Mori Rabbi, my father and teacher, Rabbi Noah Golinkin Zal. As I said, their responses are at the end of mine. Rabbi Shlomo Goren, Rabbi Alfred Cohen, Rabbi Castle Abelson of the Law Committee of the Conservative Movement, and others. And finally, as for Sudah Shlishit, it is possible to eat meat and fish. However, you can also use egg matzah, because that is what many rabbis ruled, that you can use egg matzah at Sudah Shlishit, that it is permissible to eat egg matzah on Erev Pesach all day if there is a small need, even if it is not for a sick or elderly person. And in conclusion, and this is a very important last sentence of this responsum, on Erev Pesach, which falls on Shabbat, one may not eat regular matzah, and it is difficult to eat chametz. As a result, 5 possible solutions have been proposed throughout the generations. In our day, it is preferable to adopt the 5th method. One should search for chametz on Thursday night, burn and nullify the chametz on Friday morning, and eat egg matzah at all the Shabbat meals. In other words, this Friday, when I burn the chametz, I will also nullify the chametz. I will recite Kol Chamira v'Chamia on Friday morning. If you're going to eat rolls, challah, on Friday night and Shabbat morning, you can only nullify the chametz on Shabbat morning because you are still eating chametz. However, if you are going to use egg matzah on Shabbat, you will no longer be eating chametz, and therefore you can burn the chametz on Friday morning and also recite the formula of nullifying the chametz on Friday morning. Now I will take off share screen, and hopefully I can see you. Yofi. I hope that this presentation was clear. If not, you can always read it. In writing, it's always usually clearer. And whether you follow my solution or the other solutions, I wish all of you a Chag Sameach v'Kasher, a happy and kosher Pesach. I always put the word happy before kosher because people are so obsessed about the kosher, they forget about the happy. So first, make sure that you have a Chag Sameach v'Kasher, and kasher as well.
Chag Sameach, thank you.
We now segue to our second talk this evening with Liat Yitzchaki.
Hey.
Liat, okay, so let me introduce Liat.
Very good. David,
Yeah.
Go.
יש פה הד, אני לא יודע למה, אולי תחבי לרגע. Okay. Liat Yitzchaki is an international singer-songwriter and a paitanit, an expert in liturgical poetry, specifically of Edot HaMizrach, as well as a presenter on television, radio, and at conferences. She sings in Hebrew, Ladino, Spanish, Arabic, Moroccan, Aramaic, and more. I'm curious as to hear what the more is, but perhaps for a different lecture, we'll hear the other languages. Through her work, Liat preserves ancient prayers, piyutim, and traditions, bridging traditional Jewish music with contemporary artistic expression. And she has received numerous awards, including Pras Akum, the Arts Prize of Mifal HaPayis, which sounds much better in Hebrew. In English, the Arts Prize of the National Lottery Council. It doesn't mean she won the lottery. It means she won the prize of Mifal HaPayis, which is the national lottery in the state of Israel. And the director, the new director of Shirata, which used to be called Shira. Shirata is our wonderful Beit Midrash for Piyut at the Schechter Rabbinical Seminary. The dean, Rabbi Chaya Becker, and the associate dean, Rabbi Ari Hasid, administer the Shirata program. It teaches adults how to chant Nusach of Shabbat and the various holidays, and not just the Nusach of Ashkenazim, the Nusach of all the different Edot, of many different Edot and ethnic groups in the state of Israel. And finally, Liat holds a master's degree in law and is a mother of 5, 3 of them currently serving in the IDF. So, Liat, Toda Rabba for speaking to us this evening. Bevakasha, I will put myself on mute.
Thank you very much, David, for that lovely introduction. And I hope you wanted words. And nice to see you tonight. Do you hear me well? Yeah? Well, my English is not as good as David's, but I'll try to be clear. And so tonight, actually, I would like to sing with you 2 piyutim, 2 traditional Jewish songs from different traditions. The first one is Bivhilu Yatzanu Mimitzrayim, Halach Ma'anya Bnei Chorin. It's in Aramaic. I'm sure you all know the words. And if Michal is here and she can share the file that I sent, it will be very nice. The words are not we're not taking from the Bible. The words were taken from Rambam, Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon, which was born were living in Spain, was born in Cordova and then moved to Egypt. So he wrote those words and they entered to the Passover Haggadah. And I would like to sing you that words. And first, if you can write me in the chat who wants to sing, because in Zoom it's impossible to teach something and then you can all sing it together. Then it's going to be very, very problematic. So I would like some volunteers that can raise their hands or write me in the chat that they want to try to sing, because when we're doing this sadna, when we're doing this little lesson about how to sing those liturgic songs, I would like you also to sing, not just to hear me, okay? So if there's anyone that would like to sing, I would be happy. And now, Bivhilu Yatzanu Mimitzrayim, I will try to share it by myself. I will see. Is Michal can share it? Because I see that I can do it by myself.
Yes, sure. Just a second.
Yeah.
I'll share it in a second.
Yes. So I will sing the Bivhilu Yatzanu.
Which one you send me a few?
The one with Bivhilu. It starts with the words Bivhilu Yatzanu Mimitzrayim. It's Daf Limud. It calls Daf Limud. Zoom. Okay, thank you. So I will sing first the Moroccan tradition, the Moroccan music of that liturgic words from the Rambam, from the also from the Haggadah, and it goes like this. Do we see? I'm sure you know it by heart, so it goes like a. Bivhilu yatzanu mimitzrayim, halach ma'anaya bnei chorin, ya la la. Bivhilu yatzanu mimitzrayim, halach ma'anaya bnei chorin, ya la la. So that's the music version, the Moroccan version. And generally in Morocco and North Africa tradition, they used to take the plate of the Haggadah, the plate of the Seder, with all the charoset and the matzah on it, and they put it on the heads of each one of the members of the sitting in front of the table. It symbolized all the ke'arat seder. It symbolized that all the good and the benefits and all the blessing that will be on our head. And we're going like from one to other with the plate of the seder, and we sing Bivhilu Yatzanu Mimitzrayim. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to sing one sentence, and then you sing it even if we don't hear you, but you sing it so you can do the save in your head. Because if we sing it, we learn it, okay? And if someone wants to volunteer and to sing it, I will be glad, and then I'll be able to see if you got it. Bivhilu yatzanu mimitzrayim. Okay, now you. Bivhilu. Great. Halachem ma'aneya b'nei chorin ya la la.
Halach ma'aneya b'nei chorin.
Let's do it again. Halachem ma'aneya.
Halach ma'aneya.
Great. Ya la la. And again, now let's do it all together. Even if we don't hear you, I can see you. I'm like the teacher with the eyes in the back. So do it. Bivhilu yatzanu mimitzrayim. Haneya b'nei chorin ya la la. Again. Bivhilu yatzanu mimitzrayim. Halachem ma'aneya b'nei chorin ya la la. Very good. Now, the source of that melody is unknown. I mean, it's North African, but we don't know exactly what is the source, if it's a Jewish or if it's Arabic, because there's an ancient Arabic song that goes like this, and now you will listen and you will tell me what melody is that. يا وحيد العصر في الجمال يا وحيد العصر في الجمال وطلعت البدر في الكمال وطلعت البدر في الكمال. What kind of melody do you hear here?
Well, it's the same as Bivhilu, and I think Moroccan Arabic.
Yes, exactly. You're right, Moise. The melody is like Bivhilu Yatzanu Mimitzrayim, but if you listen carefully, you can see that in the Arabic version, we sing it twice with a little twist, and in Bivhilu, the Moroccan version in Aramaic, we sing it only once. Okay, so we don't know which one was previous, if it was the Arabic or if it was the Hebrew. There's also a piyut of Rabbi David Hassin from the 18th century in Morocco, and the melody is on Bivhilu also. אליך צורי שוכן עליה, השיר מחתם ושיגיון. So we can see like a journey of that melody from Bivhilu Yatzanu Mimitzrayim, an ancient text and an ancient melody, and then we can see Ya Wahida al-Asr, which is a love song in Arabic, and I will translate it. I wrote you the lyrics in Ta'atik in English, so you can also sing Ya Wahida al-Asr fil Jamali, يا وحيد العصر في الجمال وطلعت البدر في الكمال وطلعت البدر في الكمال. So that melody, that Arabic song is like a love song. It calls about a beautiful woman, the one and the only, that came up like and rised like the moon when it's full. Okay, and the moon is full also in Passover holiday. So it's like a closure to all that section. So that was the easy one. A little piyut. The second piyut that I would like us to sing together is Chad Gadya, which in Ladino calls un cavritico. Cavritico is like a little goat, okay? I'm sure you know the Chad Gadya, which generally is in, okay, and Michal put us the Chad Gadya. During saying some words about the piyut. So Chad Gadya is a traditional song that's sung at the end of the Passover Seder. It's a part of the Haggadah. The song is cyclical, with each verse introducing a new character or object that links to the previous ones. Okay? And that Chad Gadya is generally sung at the end of the Haggadah. And generally it has a very light melody. We want the kids to wake up. It's like a little story. The sources of the Chad Gadya is like in stories of tradition, different traditions in Germany, in France, in Italy. The first version was in Italy in the 15th century, and it was, you don't imagine, but it was on a mouse. It was on a mouse. It was called Chad Achbara. And from that we know, because generally we see that the cat is eating the little goat. But when we think about the original version that was about a mouse, so we can understand that the cat ate the mouse. So that was the first version that we saw about that song. And the version that we're going to sing today is Un Cavritico. It's in Ladino. We call it, the Ladino is the Jewish Spanish that was among many kehilot and traditions in Jewish traditions. It started in Spain, of course, and after Gerus Sfarad, after the expulsion of Spain, the Jewish Spanish people, it would spread, that language spread all over the Balkan, North Africa, even America, South America, and of course in Spain and Portugal. And it calls, I will sing one or two versions so we can find the melody. It's a very simple melody and very sweet one, very easy. And I want you to hear it and to learn I'm going to sing 2 or 3 verses, and then after it, I would like that you will sing each part, not just me, okay? Chad Gadya. I can put you a link if you want to know I'm sure you know the Aramaic version, but the people who doesn't know or doesn't understand, I will put you a link in the chat that also translating it to in English. So Chad Gadya, Chad Gadya. Cavritico che lo merco mi padre, porodos levanim, porodos levanim. Y vino el gato y se comió el cavritico que lo mercó mi padre, porodos levanim, porodos levanim. Dezabin Abba vitrei zuzei. Y vino el perro y modrió el gato que se comió el cavritico que lo mercó mi padre por 2 levanim, por 2 levanim. Dezabin Abba vitrei zuzei. Okay, I think you got the melody. What do you say? You got it? It's very easy. David say it like that. That's good. You can mark me if you got the melody. It's very simple. It's for kids. The songs and the piyutim that's in the end of the Haggadah are very, very simple because all the kids are very, very tired, and also the adults are tired, and we need to wake them up. We need them to sing it with an excitement, and with joy. So the songs are very, very simple. And also Chad Gadya is like a little story about a little goat that the cat ate it, and then the dog came. It's like a little story, and it makes the Seder more spicy. So what I would like us to say, that I'm going to start the first verse, and you can just sing one after the other, and the end we can do it. A popular recording done by Yoram Gaon. Yes, Yoram Gaon is from the Ladino community. You're right, Dennis. And he sang a few piyutim. He had an album of Ladino liturgic Ladino music. So I will start Un Cavritico, and then you can just take the microphone and do it. Un cavritico che lo mercò mi padre, por 2 levanim, por 2 levanim. Y vino el gato. Y vino. I want to hear. You want to hear? Is someone is open? Y vino el gato y se comió el cavritico que lo mercó mi padre por 2 levanim, por 2 levanim. Dezabin Abba vitrei zuzei. Y vino el perro y modrió el gato que se comió el cavritico que lo mercó mi padre por 2 levanim, por 2 levanim. Dezabin Abba vitrei zuzei. Who can I hear now? Because I don't want to hear just myself. I'm hearing myself all the time. It's boring, believe me. So I would like to hear one of you. Y vino la vara. Y vino la vara, which came the stick. So who can I hear someone? Now let's hear you. Y vino la vara y ajarvó el que se comió el cabritico que lo mercó mi padre por dos. Great, תזבין אבא בתרי זוזי. Now the fire came, y vino el fuego. Y vino el fuego. Josh, what about you? You're afraid. Okay, don't be afraid, guys. It's Zoom. We don't see each other after the Zoom. It's very easy. Y vino el fuego. If you don't sing, I will sing, but then you just hear.
I know it, but I know it from your Armgone's record, so it's slightly different.
Great. You know it. That's good, David. Y vino el fuego.
Que vino el fuego y quemó la vara, que apagó al perro, que mordió el gato, que se comió al cabritico.
Great.
Que lo mercó mi padre, por dos levanim, por dos levanim.
Wow. Wow, that was very good. Yeah, you can continue, David. It was very good.
Vino el agua y mató al fuego, que quemó la vara, que ajarvó al perro, que mordió el gato, que se comió al cabritico, que lo mercó mi padre.
Por dos levanim, por dos levanim. Y vino. Very good, David, thank you. Y vino el buey y se bebió la agua, que amató el fuego, que quemó la vara, que ajarvó el perro, que mordió el gato, que se comió el cabritico, que lo mercó mi padre por dos levanim, por dos levanim. Dezabin Abba Bitrei Zuzei. I'm sure you know the song, even the people that didn't know at the beginning. That's the song. Is there another volunteer? No, Josh is very nechratz, we call it in Hebrew. So I will do it, or David, because David was so good. David, you want to continue? And then we go to
We can go to maybe the last verse, which is the long
Okay.
one. I just can't see it on the screen.
Yes, so if Michal can put us the words. Michal, can you... First, I'm putting you in the chat the translation to English, Hebrew, and okay, Michal, can you put us please the file, but in the למטה. מיכל, אם את יכולה לשים לנו את זה למטה. So even in Ladino, there are some words that we say it in Hebrew, like מלאך המוות, הבינו אל מלאך המוות, okay? Came מלאך המוות, and at the end, הבינו אל סנטו בנדיצ'ו. סנטו בנדיצ'ו is like הקדוש ברוך הוא, or Señor del Mundo. Señor del Mundo is like the God in the sky, the Señor in the sky. So we go to Ivino. No, it was good. Great. Ivino el Santo Bendicho. Or Ivino Akadosh Baruch Hu. Like my grandmother used to say. Ivino Akadosh Baruch Hu, but with the resh. If you can say it, it will be very, very helpful to get into it, to the Ladino. Y vino el santo bendicho, y vino a Kadosh Baruch Hu, y degolló el malach המוות, que degolló el Schechter, que bebió el buey, que se bebió la agua, mató el fuego, que quemó la barra, que ajarvó el perro, que modrió el gato, Chi sé comió el cabritico que lo mercó mi padre por dos levanim de Zabin Abba bitrei zuzei Chad Gadia de Zabin Abba bitrei
Next year, I
Wow,
will
איזה
do
יופי.
Arabic for you.
Thank you very much. Now you have another song for the Haggadah. At the end, when you're tired or the kids are tired, you can teach them. And it was very nice being with you and hear you. Thank you to the singers, Moise and David, the great singers, and the other woman that I didn't catch her name. Thank you all. Thank you for the listening. And Chag Sameach.
So these are the wonderful things, types of wonderful things that Riyad and the Shirata staff do in our rabbinical seminary. There's an echo, which means somebody, I think, is not muted, so please mute your microphones. Okay. Acharon Chaviv, last but not least, I have the privilege of presenting Rabbi Matt Berkowitz. If you've been following the Schechter emails, you know that I will be stepping down as president of the Schechter Institutes at the end of June. And Rabbi Matt Berkowitz is the president-elect. Mazal Tov, Matt. He begins on July 1st. And we wish him much hatzlacha in this very important task. Rabbi Matt is both an accomplished artist, the author of the Lavelle Haggadah, published by Schechter back in 2008, which has gone through a number of editions. And he is also a wonderful teacher and darshan. He sends out the great Torah every Friday if you want to get on his list. And his topic this evening is creative ideas to enrich your Seder. Matt, bevakasha.
Rabbi Professor David Galinkin, thank you so much. Baruch Tieh. It is an honor and privilege to follow in your footsteps. And it is a joy to be in this virtual Beit Midrash this evening in Israel. Thank you all for joining. I also do want to ask those who do not have their cameras on, you are welcome to open your cameras, show your faces. Always wonderful to see faces. And I also want to say a shakach to Rabbi Galinkin for his teaching, for kicking us off with what to do when Seder falls out Motzei Shabbat. And Liat Yitzchaki, we could have listened to you the entire evening. It was such a joy to sit at the dust of your feet and to hear your joyful and joyous music. So thank you so much for joining the Zoom into Pesach. We're going to continue with creative ideas to enrich the Seder, and I want to begin with a word of caution. That word of caution is that I am now teaching on my favorite topic, which means that it is virtually impossible to cover all the material that I would love to cover in the 30 minutes that I've been giving. That said, I do want to say that the guiding principles for me in preparing for Seder, and I believe guiding principles for all of us in preparing for Seder, are the following. In the Mishnah, when the rabbis talk about the child asking questions and the need to respond to the child, the rabbis say in the Mishnah, Lefi da'ato shel ben aviv milamdo, that the parent responds according to the knowledge of the child, meaning that it is critically important that in preparing for the Seder, we know the audience that is seated around our Seder table. Who did we invite to sit around our Seder table? Obviously, the Seder is going to be very, very different if we have a lot of children seated around that table versus a lot of adults seated around the table. Or if we have a mixed crowd, we need to be able to pitch it to keep everyone engaged and involved. So that is one principle that I want us to keep in mind. And the second principle that we need to keep in mind is the famous teaching of the Haggadah, B'chol dor vador chayav adam lirot et atzmo ke'ilu hu yatsa miMitzrayim, that in every generation, one is obligated to see oneself as if each of us personally came out of Egypt. That is to say, history is not history for the Jewish people. It's very much our story. in the present day, in the current day. It's important to keep both of these concepts in mind. And I also want to say that the quality of your Seder is proportional to the amount of homework that you do in preparation of that Seder. Do not think that you are going to come to the Seder table and simply open the Haggadah and it is going to be an engaging Seder with the sparks flying. Rather, each of us needs to do our homework in bringing interesting teachings, interesting traditions to play Seder night. So that said, I want to now share the PowerPoint presentation that I put together. Okay, wonderful. Okay, I want to be sure that you can all see the title page of this presentation, right? The Art of the Seder, Creative Ideas to Enrich Passover. Just
Yes,
give me a thumbs up that you
clear.
can.
It's clear.
Fantastic. Okay. So that said, I want to begin with the most important layer of connectedness to our modern world and relevance. And that is noting that it has been 547 days of war in Israel, 547 days of captivity for 59 hostages. And I want to draw your attention to this remarkable site that was put together by a number of organizations. Kol Ha'ot, the Jewish Education Project, and M Squared. The site is called Everyone Counts. And if you click on this site, it will take you, hopefully you can all see it. Do you all see Jewish Moments? Bringing the hostages to your Seder supplement? Yes? Thumbs up if you see it. Rabbi Galinkin, is it coming
No,
up?
we don't see it. No, we only have 547 days of captivity.
Okay, 1 second, I'm taking it off share. And I'm going to share this. Okay,
now we see it.
be able
Yeah.
to see it now.
Yeah.
Okay. This is a wonderful resource for Seder. I put wonderful in quotes because obviously this is a very, very painful topic for all of us to talk about, but also a very necessary topic for us to talk about. And there is a downloadable section of how it is that you can bring very, very important sources on Pidyon Shvuim, on the redemption of captives, to your Seder table, so that those 59 hostages, as it were, are very much present over the course of our conversation on freedom. I really encourage you to download the sheets. Very, very rich resource to bring to Seder this year. It's shocking to think that this is the second Seder that we're celebrating with hostages still sitting in the tunnels of Gaza. I am now taking it off our website and bringing it back to our presentation as we go from the beginning to the next slide. Okay, onward and upward. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay. Now I'm just trying to advance it. One moment of technical difficulties. Okay. Here we are. Okay, I'm going to share with you a number of images from the Lovel Haggadah. And the reason that I want to start here is that this is an image that's based on Deuteronomy 26. And the reason that I wanted to open my Haggadah, the Lovel Haggadah, with this image from inspired by Deuteronomy 26 is because it talks about the mitzvah of Hava'at Bikurim, the bringing of the first fruits. The first fruits are taken from the 7 species of the land of Israel, right? The 7 fruits or produce that the land of Israel is blessed with: wheat, barley, dates, pomegranates, figs, etc. You see all of those in the frame of the piece. And in the center, you shall bring from the first fruits of the ground that you shall bring from the land in Hebrew. The gazelles, because Israel is called Eretz Hatzvi, the land of the gazelles in the book of Daniel. And then again, you see the first fruits in the basket. The Israelites are commanded to present these first fruits as an expression of appreciation once they have come into the land of Israel. All of that to say that I believe it's a very, very beautiful way to open the Seder celebration by talking about Hakarat HaTov, by talking about what it is that we are appreciative of as we begin the Seder celebration. What blessings have we been blessed with over the past year, and what are we bringing to the Seder table? It's a wonderful question to ask your Seder participants as you begin Seder. Right, continuing on, a very, very cool piece that I want to share with you, which always sparks interest and conversation, is what is known as the Atbash. Okay, this is a very, very intriguing piece that comes to us from the Talmud. If you take the first letters of the Aleph Bet, Aleph through Zion, the first 7 letters, and you line them up against the last 7 letters of the Aleph Bet, such that Aleph corresponds to Taf, Bet corresponds to Shin, Gimel corresponds to Resh, right, all the way through Zion corresponding to Ayin. The first 7 letters correspond to each of the days of Passover. Aleph is the first day of Passover, Bet is the second day, Gimel the third day, and the last 7 letters correspond to a commemoration that we have over the course of the Jewish year. So Taf is Tisha B'Av. Shin stands for Shavuot. Did you know that Tisha B'Av always falls out on whatever the first day of Pesach is? First day of Pesach this year is Sunday. So if you look in the calendar, look ahead, you will see that the 9th of Av falls out on Sunday. Shavuot is going to fall out on Monday this year. Rosh Hashanah, Tuesday. Kriyat Torah, which is Simchat Torah, is going to be Wednesday. Tzom Kippur, Yom Kippur, Thursday. Purim was on Friday. And until the 20th century, nothing corresponded to the 7th day of Pesach. Lo and behold, what corresponds to the 7th day of Pesach? Yom HaAtzmaut, Israeli Independence Day, always falls out on whatever the 7th day of Pesach is. Of course, the most striking piece of this whole Atbash business is the Aleph and Taf. The fact that Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, which commemorates destruction, exile, always corresponds to the first day of Pesach, in which we're celebrating redemption, the polar opposite. So when you think about it, it's incredibly powerful that these are the poles of Jewish history. All of Jewish history plays out between Galut and Geulah, between exile and redemption. And here you have it in this incredible trick. This shows you that the rabbis of the Talmud had way too much time on their hands. This is a very, very cool piece. All you have to do is recalibrate it, obviously, every year, and it works like clockwork. Saturday night service. Okay. You are all experts on what to do when Seder falls out Motzei Shabbat because of Rabbi Galinkin's shiur at the beginning. I do want to add that there is a very cool mnemonic device that the rabbis created to remember the order of ritual when Seder falls out Motzei Shabbat. Why do things get complicated? They get complicated because we have the ritual of Havdalah that we need to worry about in addition to the beginning of Seder. And so the rabbis created this mnemonic device to help us remember precisely what to do. That is Yaknahaz. Yaknahaz stands for Yayin, Kiddush, Ner, Havdalah, and Zman. Yayin, which is the blessing over the wine, Kiddush, the sanctification of the day, Ner, the blessing over the candle, Havdalah, the blessing of separation, and Zman shechianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. One of the most fascinating pieces of this Yaknahaz business is that in many medieval manuscript Haggadot, you see a picture of a rabbit hunt next to the Kiddush. What is this about? This whole business of a rabbit hunt right next to Kiddush? It is about the fact that in German, the expression for hunt the hare is Jagdin Haz. Okay, here you've got this image of a rabbit hunt or a hare hunt going on. And the whole idea in Ashkenazic Haggadot was that the visual that we have here would be a mnemonic device for the mnemonic device, right? Having this picture, if you're an Ashkenazic Jew, you would look at this and you would say, Yagdin Haz, hunt the hare, oh, Yakna Haz. And then you would remember precisely what to do when Seder falls out Saturday night, Yakna Haz, right? I'm going to show you one of the most chilling representations of this whole business of hunt the hare, which appears in my mentor's Haggadah, my very dear friend's Haggadah, David Moss. In the Moss Haggadah, what did David do? David illustrated the emblems of nations that have persecuted the Jews all throughout Jewish history, right? You have Hadrian, Vespasian, you have papal coats of arms, right? And what do you notice that they have in common? Can someone take themselves off of mute and tell us what do all
eagle.
The
Eagle.
eagle, excellent. The eagle. You see that they all have the eagle in common, and you see the rabbit in the talons of the eagle, right? So the way that David is relating to that image of Yagdin Haz, of hunt the hare, is that the hare represents the Jewish people, the persecuted, the pursued, right? And the eagle represents the pursuer, right? The hunter, right? This is the eagle pursuing its prey. Right. All of these coats of arms represent nations that have persecuted the Jews, that have pursued us, right? Going all the way down to, right, you have a coat of arms of the city of Trent, right? Very, very famous for the blood libel of the 15th century. You have an early German Reichsadler in the last row, obviously the Nazi emblem. And then what do you see in the bottom left-hand corner? You see the hare that's hopping out of the circle. But look closely on the page that's right next to it, and you'll see exactly where the hare is hopping to. Shehechianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. The hare survives the pursuit. Right? This is the miracle of the Jewish people, the blessing of thanking God for having lived, God having sustained us to this day. This is an absolutely brilliant illumination of this idea of hunt the hare. And not only that, some say that David was hinting at something in that final box. What other nation today has an eagle as its national symbol?
United States.
There you go, the United States. David has never admitted to this particular illusion. But many guess that this is what he was hinting at in this final box. And certainly with the floodgates of anti-Semitism that American Jews have been experiencing, it's understandable, certainly understandable. David made Aliyah in the course of creating his particular Haggadah. So many say the rabbit represents David and his family hopping out of the box, right, and coming to the land of Israel. We move on at this rapid pace. Okay, so now I want to turn our attention to Halachma Anya. Actually, you know what? Before Halachma Anya, let's go to the 4 questions. One of the fascinating things that we learn about the 4 questions in the original text of this liturgy is that the questions aren't questions at all. They're statements, okay? And I highly recommend that all of us go back to the 10th chapter of Masechet Pesachim, right? And there we learn in the Mishnah the order, right, of the Seder, what the Seder is meant to look like. And what you realize is the rabbis left many, many moments or spaces for spontaneity in leading the Seder. So follow this particular teaching. It says here in the 4th Mishnah of the 10th chapter of Pesachim, Mazgulo kosheni, we pour the second cup of wine, or literally we mix the second cup of wine. Wine used to come in very, very concentrate form and needed to be diluted with some water, not unlike the manischewitz that we all drink today, which is like syrup that needs to be diluted somewhat. And after you pour the second cup of wine, it says, V'chan haben shoel et aviv. And here the child should ask, literally, his father. Mishnah goes on to say, Ve'imein dat baven aviv melamdo. But if the child doesn't have enough knowledge or understanding, then the parent should teach the child. When the Mishnah says, V'chan haben shoel et aviv, and here the child should ask his father, what is the intent of the Mishnah here? What is the Mishnah saying? What does it mean by the child should ask? What should the child ask?
Whatever he wants.
There you go. Whatever the child wants. It's a moment of utter freshness and spontaneity. You might say, or might think, that it's the 4 questions that the child should ask. But it's not the 4 questions. Look at what the Mishnah says. It says the child should ask whatever question comes to mind. And then it goes on and says, but if the child doesn't have enough knowledge or curiosity, then the parent should teach the child, colon, Ma nishtana halayla hazeh mikol halelot, which is often translated as, why is this night different from all other nights? And then we go on to the rest of the liturgy. However, that's an incorrect translation. Ma nishtana, if you look at the Hebrew syntax closely, and I know Harvey Lefkowitz knows this, right? Manishtana is not, why is this night different from all other nights, but how different is this night from all other nights? Exclamation point. Meaning that the parent is doing whatever it takes to spark curiosity in the child and is making a number of observations about what's going on around the Seder table. So the parent says, how different is this night from all other nights? On all other nights, we eat either leavened or unleavened bread. On this night, we eat only matzah. On all other nights, we eat a variety of vegetables. On this night, maror. On all other nights, the Mishnah goes on, we eat roasted, boiled, or cooked meat. On this night, only roasted meat. On all other nights, right, we don't even dip once, but on this night, we dip twice. Fascinating. They're actually all statements. None of these are questions. And not only that, we see a statement here that doesn't appear in our version of the Haggadah. And that is this whole business of eating roasted, boiled, or cooked meat, but on this night, only roasted meat. Right? And that is because in the Mishnah, it's hearkening back to the Korban Pesach. It's hearkening back to the roasted lamb that we would eat, around which the entire ritual was centered in biblical times. Okay, and rabbinic times when the temple stood, right? Of course, with the destruction of the temple, right, that puts an end to the Korban Pesach. And then the question that, or statement that comes in its place, on all their nights, we eat either sitting or reclining, right? But on this night, we recline, right? A reminder that when we eat the matzah or drink the wine, right, that we have a mitzvah of reclining Seder night. Right? And there's my illumination, which appears in the Lovel Haggadah of the 4 statements or the 4 questions. Avadim Hayinu, we were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt. I want to share this particular illumination. My Avadim Hayinu, right? You'll see Avadim Hayinu at the bottom, upside down. What's going on here? The midrash that inspired this particular artwork is one that teaches, Rav Chanin teaches, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God turned to the tribes and said to the tribes, you sold your brother Joseph into slavery, and so every year you are going to recite Avadim Hayinu, You are going to sing Avadaim Hayinu, and you're going to remind yourselves that you too were slaves in the land of Egypt, and through that you will atone for the sin of selling your brother Joseph into enslavement. So at the bottom of the illumination, you see the pyramid, the Ketonet Pasim, the Technicolor dream coat of Joseph draped over the pyramid, and then shackles of slavery around the pyramid. The shackles become the roots of a tree of life that's growing in front of Mount Sinai. The piece flips, right? And then the quote from Vayikra, the children of Israel belong to me. They are my servants. I took them out of the land of Egypt. So the illumination itself tells the story of transitioning from being servants of Pharaoh to becoming servants of God. The four children, right? One of the most lively parts of the Seder, right? Here we have a wonderful little ditty that is written to the tune of Oh My Darling Clementine. By the way, I don't want to forget, in the chat, you will see that I put the entire packet of creative ideas to enrich your Seder. It is in the chat now. You can easily download this onto your computer and use it Seder night. Okay, so I encourage you to do that. Okay, one of the most wonderful parts of the Schechter Haggadah that Rabbi Galenkin and Rabbi Josh Kulp included in their Haggadah is there are there's a proliferation of images of how it is that the four sons, have been illuminated all throughout Jewish history. And I encourage you to take a look at this very, very rich treasure trove in the Schechter Haggadah. It's not too late. You can order that Haggadah on Amazon, or I put the links into the chat, ordering the Haggadah through Schechter. So here is one very, very striking image. Of course, the Rasha, right? The one at the end of the table smoking the cigar at the end, right? Figure out who is the Chacham, who is the wise child, right? And it goes on, right? These images are endless, right? My buddy David Moss illustrates the four children on a deck of cards, right? Here are the four sons on a deck of cards. Why? Because when you have children, you never know what hand you're going to be dealt. And yet, right, you look at the calligraphic flourishes at the bottom of this folio page, right? That's Hebrew micrography, and every single one of those flourishes is a bracha, right? David wanted to communicate that no matter if you are the wise, the wicked, the simple, or the one who doesn't know how to ask, you are worthy of a blessing. Each child is illuminated in relation to the book. Notice the Rasha, the wicked one, is sitting on the book, while the wise one is holding the book reverently. Right, from the very famous Rabbinical Assembly Haggadah, that each of us has all four types in ourselves. Right, the four children by David Wander, right, he represents them as books. Right, a modern Israeli version of the four children. Okay, here we've got four women representing the four different types, right? And my version, I chose a biblical character to represent each of the four children. The prophetess Devorah is the wise child, right? The wicked, King Achav from the Book of Kings, Lot is the Tam, and Adam and Eve are the ones who don't know how to ask, right? Our little secret in my original version of the four children, I had chosen Jonah as my wicked one, and I chose Noah as the simple. When I revealed this piece after working on it for months to Didi and Steve Lavelle, who commissioned my Haggadah, their faces fell to the ground. They were visibly upset with me. Why were they upset with me? Well, it turns out that the family that lives in Minneapolis, this is their daughter Wendy, son-in-law Colin. Their children are much bigger now. They are all young adults now. They have two sons, and Noah. It was a home run. Completely blew it on this illumination, which shows how an artist jump into their work and the Jewish community needed horseradish for making crane for Pesach, but all the European Union countries gave them the same. Reported at Ben Gurion onto the LL 789 flight to Madrid, all well. Unfortunately, when the rabbi went to Madrid airport to claim the horseradish, he was informed of a wildcat strike that broke out. As a result, the crane stayed mainly on the plane. Studio worked on the wonderful images of this particular Haggadah. It's a very, very cute piece that is easily available over the internet. You're welcome to send me an email, send us an email. I'm happy to share the information with you. As we near the finish line, I also want to share another fabulous resource, which can be found on David Moss's website. He created a resource called the Siman Tov Seder. These are wonderful booklets that correspond, right, to each of the steps of the Seder. There are 15 of these booklets. They are downloadable. You can print them out on a color printer, follow the instructions of how to fold them. They have interesting questions. Each of the steps of the Seder is connected to a particular midah, kadesh, holiness, or chatz, renewal, karpas, growth, etc. As I close, I want to share a very, very beautiful video piece with you. This is a Vahi She'amda, and she stood by us piece, which we sing at the Seder table every year, that was produced by two magnificently talented cantors, Cantor Ozzy Schwartz and